The subtitle of your book is Beyond Servant Leadership. What does that mean?
When the first servant leadership book was published decades ago, it was a pivotal shift in terms of how the idea of leadership was considered. Prior to that book, most leadership was focused on the qualities and the attributes of great leaders. What were those qualities? And when servant leadership came along as an idea, and it really caught on and has burned like a wildfire, if you will, for many, many, many years, because it shifted the focus to everybody else in the organization, away from the leader, and moved it to what the leader is supposed to be doing for the employees or the members of the organization, or if there is the citizens or whatever. And so it was a very pivotal moment. And when we say beyond servant leadership, we're saying, well, let's see if there's another stage even beyond that. And what we find happening sometimes is you see this shift between, and you see it in the millions of books that are written on leadership. It either focuses on the leader, or it focuses on how you treat the employees or the people that are in the organization or in the group of team members, and it shifts from one to the other. And what we try to do, and we always say it's beyond servant leadership, is we embrace servant leadership, but it's like, how do you bring those two forces together in a way that allows the organization to achieve its maximum effectiveness, as well as self-actualizing, to use Maslow's term, or to energizing people at their highest performance level as well. So you're looking for high-performing people that are deeply fulfilled and satisfied, as well as the organization achieving extraordinary results. And we're trying to marry those two, and that's why we call it Beyond Servant Leadership, because it's not just about the leader, it's not just about the team members, it's about integrating those two in a way that allows them to achieve extraordinary outcomes.
In very simple terms, the prior thought of it being about the leader or the me or the I part of the leadership equation, that's only part of it. Servant leadership is the people and the you. It's not about the you and the I, it's about the we together. And what can we do together? And it's, as Phil said also, not just about leader as servant to the people, but people as contributing, engaged members of the organization to achieve organizational mission, which in itself is extremely difficult in tough times.
In fact, when Greenleaf wrote the original book about servant leadership that really just caught the imagination of many people in many business schools and organizations throughout the world, literally, when he was writing that, he admitted that there was a manipulative component to all leadership. It's a phrase that 99% of the people that followed never even pick up on and look at. And I think what he was hinting at is, how do you reconcile the tension between what the organization wants to do and what the leader needs to do and what employees need to do? And so what we try to do is to pick up on that little kernel that was in the original book and say, how do you reconcile that tension? And I think the difference between it's all about me as a leader or it's all about you, it's literally about how we achieve things, great things together. And I think too many of the books these days and too much leadership is either focused on the I or the you, but not on the we.
The other beyond servant leadership part is that we've divided the book into two parts, a beliefs part and a practices part. And seldom do we see either servant leadership or any other leadership pieces written where they integrate not only how does the leader have to think and believe about what he's doing or she's doing, but what are the practices that are necessary to bring the beliefs to life, and how do those two things work together, because they're completely interacting with one another, and reinforcing one helps the other and vice versa.
The other piece that I think we say beyond servant leadership that really is instrumental, what has happened to many leaders is they've learned practices at a surface level about what you're supposed to do to be seen as a servant leadership, but they don't have underneath it the underlying belief structure to support it. And then people end up poking through that and finding they're really not sincere. They're just doing quote unquote servant leadership stuff. I mean, toxic positivity is a classic example. We'll reinforce, tell everybody you're doing a good job. Well, yes, do that. But underneath it is something else that tells us that you tell them out of respect when they're really doing a good job and you're not doing faux praise that's really out there. I'll give you another quick example, and that is part of being a good leader is recognizing that you don't know. And that, in fact, the first chapter in the book is literally about great leaders have a belief that they should embrace uncertainty. And I think that's the fundamental component to a belief structure that you have to execute the practices of good listening, for example. Good listening, that everybody says is an important practice and skill, and I can teach you all the kind of things that you should be doing to be seen as a good listener. But unless underneath it, you really believe that you don't have all the answers, it doesn't matter whether you act like you're a good listener by shaking your head and saying, tell me more, and all that type of thing, because then it just becomes a show. And a lot of people have understood that, really smart, insightful people, after they see a leader perform as if they were a servant leadership, but they don't have the real underlying belief structure.
You know, some people know all the practices, but don't have an underlying belief structure. That's very necessary. The opposite is also true. Some people can espouse the beliefs, but they can't put them into practice every day so that they don't carry out the beliefs in how they lead every day. So both ways are very important, and that is another element of being beyond servant leadership with this book.
Yeah, I think the key issue in servant leadership is it was oftentimes clear what the aspiration was in terms of how you wanted people to be. Sometimes it was clear about even the practices, but they didn't provide the detail about the underlying beliefs that are out there. And sometimes people have the beliefs, like embracing uncertainty or knowing that you can make progress in a variety of ways. They may have those beliefs, but they don't know how to do it. So what we try to do is bring those two together in this book, and I think that it's really important. And the reason why it's important is it's unlike learning to operate your new fangled television, just learning how to punch the buttons. That's all you really need to learn. You don't need to understand the underlying theory. It doesn't work that way with people. You have to understand the underlying beliefs, and you have to understand those underlying beliefs and structures in order to be successful at accomplishing the task of working with people.